Welcome to the Interview Prep Guru, where I help you get prepared, get confident, and get the job. I'm a real Google hiring manager and a professional interview coach. I've spent thousands of hours on the other side of the table, and I've seen what works and what doesn't work when it comes to job interviews. This channel is all about sharing the most successful, proven interview tips with you so that you can ace that job interview and land your dream job. My interview coaching clients pay $200 an hour to learn these exact same proven interview tips. Thanks to my coaching and their hard work, many of them have landed their dream jobs, including jobs they never dreamed they could get at big tech companies like Facebook, Google, and Amazon. In this video, I'll teach you how to answer behavioral interview questions using a proven framework that you can use for every single behavioral interview question for the rest of your career. In my career, I've made actual hiring decisions based on how well people answer behavioral interview questions. Many times, I'll choose one candidate over another candidate based primarily on how well they handled behavioral interview questions. My framework is the best framework because it has one killer element that only a real hiring manager can teach you. So if you've been looking for the one key to unlock your understanding of how to answer behavioral interview questions, this is the last video you will ever need to watch. Learn the framework and practice it on a number of different questions. I've provided some questions at the end of this video to help you get started practicing the framework once you've learned it. Once you know this framework, you'll be able to ace any behavioral interview question thrown at you. In case you aren't familiar with behavioral interview questions, they are a type of interview question where the interviewer will ask you about your past experiences. Behavioral interview questions are designed to learn how you have responded to certain situations in the past to get an idea of how you are likely to respond to similar situations in the future. The key is to be honest about what you did and specific about what you learned and what you would do differently if faced with the same situation in the future. Behavioral interview questions are typically formatted something like, tell me about a time when something happened and how did you handle it? For example, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker and how did you handle it? Or, tell me about a time when you were overstretched with your workload. What did you do? The key to mastering the behavioral interview question is to consistently demonstrate that you are a living, learning, self-improvement machine. I have honed this framework based on what I have seen work in hundreds of interviews as a Google hiring manager. I know that this framework works because I've actually made hiring decisions where I usually choose the candidate who answered their behavioral interview questions better by using a framework like this. This framework has all the pieces needed to help you answer the questions perfectly and to stand out against other candidates. And what's great about the framework is that it's simple and easy to remember, and it covers all of the information that the interviewer needs to hear for any behavioral interview question. And as a bonus, this framework has a secret sauce element that gives the interviewer a lot of extra confidence in you. So without further ado, here's the framework. First, give context. As an interviewer, I need you to set the stage because I wasn't there when this situation happened. Tell me about the company you were working for, your role, and the situation that surrounded your actions. Next, explain what you did. This should include your specific actions that you took to handle the situation and also the outcome. It's always better to share stories with good outcomes, but as a heads up, some interviewers will ask you to talk about a failure. I will release a future video walking through how to answer the failure question, but for now, you should focus on preparing your stories where your actions created a positive outcome. Next, share what you learned. Companies want to hire people who reflect on their experiences and who strive to improve themselves and their impact every day. Even if your project was a slam dunk, you need to tell me what you learned so I can be confident that you're the kind of employee who will push yourself and the team to improve every single day. Lastly, tell me how you would do things differently if you found yourself in the same situation in the future. Here, you need to make it clear that you have a plan to deploy those lessons learned that you just talked about. This piece of the framework is really the icing on the cake, and it is the secret sauce that most candidates miss. By telling me what you do differently in the future, you demonstrate a level of maturity far above most other candidates. And now I can actually imagine how you would behave today on my team if I hire you. So don't skip this step. I'm going to illustrate this framework in action by providing one behavioral interview question and answer. If you want to see more examples of how to answer behavioral interview questions, I have a much more detailed video with the 5 most common types of behavioral interview questions and answers, linked above. The question is, tell me about a time when you were overstretched by your workload. What did you do? Absolutely. I was working at a department store, and as the night shift manager, my role was to ensure that the closing of the store at the end of the night was done correctly. To do this, I did a full round of the store and completed the closing checklist each night. The rest of the closing employees always had to wait until the closing checklist was complete before they could go home. Over time, the rest of the store management and I would add to the checklist to make it more robust and comprehensive, which was good, but it added to the overall work. At one point, I realized that it took over an hour to complete the checklist, during which time some of the earlier items that I had reviewed and completed might become undone. For example, I might have checked that the bathrooms were cleaned and they may no longer be clean. I realized that I needed to parallelize the work, splitting the checklist amongst multiple responsible employees so that we could complete the checklist in a shorter period of time and close the store more quickly. I divided the checklist into sections by department and assigned each sub-checklist to the department leader. After each department leader did their checklist, we would all review all of the checklists together and everyone could go home once I signed off. The employees were excited to get the closing activities done faster, since they could get home earlier and know that the store would be in good shape when they returned the next day. Over time, this also meant that department leaders could learn more about store management, and one of the other leaders even got promoted to be the opening manager. That person told me that learning how to do closing was the thing that gave them the confidence to apply for the new expanded role as opening manager. I think this was really the first time in my career that I learned the power of delegation. I learned how much more we were able to achieve in a much shorter time frame, and also with higher confidence that it was done well and accurately. I also learned that delegation isn't just about lowering my workload. It's about giving opportunities to others, like the department leader who applied for the larger role as opening manager after being included in the closing checklist process. Aside from implementing this change sooner, I would say one additional thing that I would do differently is to implement a peer review process upfront. When I initially implemented this change, we gathered all the checklists at the end of the night, and it was me who would ultimately sign off on closing the store. I later implemented a peer review process where department leaders would check each other's work, and this became a way to cross-train leaders, which made us better running as a store, and now department leaders knew more about other departments. If faced with the same situation again, I would definitely implement the peer review change sooner. You can see from my answer, it's impressive to hear someone reflect on their accomplishment and then go on to explain how they would improve upon the effort even more, even though it was already successful. That's the secret sauce of this framework. If you follow this framework, you should end up spending about the same amount of time answering the basic question, which is what happened and what did you do, as you end up spending talking about what you learned and what you do differently. As a company, I want to hire people who get better every day. And as a hiring manager, I pick those people every time over candidates who just answer the basics of the question. So use this framework and get hired. To recap, here's my proven framework for how to answer behavioral interview questions. First, give context. Then, tell me what you did. Then, tell me what you learned. And end it with what you do differently if faced with the same situation in the future. This framework shows that you handled a past situation well, and it gives a lot of confidence that you would handle a future situation expertly. Congratulations, you now know the proven method for how to answer behavioral interview questions. Practice this method on all of the questions listed here. I included a few different common flavors of behavioral interview questions, and you'll see that the framework works on all of them. Once you get to a point where you're organically following the framework without having to refer to the definitions, you have mastered how to answer behavioral interview questions, and you are well on your way to landing your dream job. If you want me to create more helpful interview tip videos, subscribe to this channel. To get my best interview tips faster, make sure you ring the bell to get notified when I publish new videos. Please drop a comment in this video to let me know what else you'd like me to cover. And if you use these tips, drop a comment and let me know how your interviews go. Best of luck and happy interview prep.